Welcome to the Explainer. Right now, we are watching a massive, historic shift in global power unfold in real time. Using the latest academic research and strategic data, we're looking at a world in deep transition, driven by China's hyper-focused technological advancements on one side and the rapid, aggressive expansion of the BRICS nations on the other. So if you're trying to figure out how this modern geopolitical chessboard is actually being played today, you are absolutely in the right place. Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with the macro shift in global power, dive into China's high-tech ambitions, hit the semiconductor battlefield, zoom out to the BRICS expansion, and then finish up with a reality check on the limits of this alternative order. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Shifting global power and the transition away from unipolarity. You know, for decades, the global order was a bit like a massive company with just one undeniable CEO. Basically, a system of US-led unipolarity. But according to the research we're breaking down today, we're officially transitioning into a multipolar world order. What does that mean? It's an international system where economic, institutional, and technological power isn't held by a single hegemon, but is instead decentralized. It's shared among multiple influential centers. Essentially, the world is getting a brand new board of directors. Just look at how the US Department of Defense and the ODNI are framing this. They're calling China their most consequential strategic competitor for the coming decades. That quote perfectly captures a huge driver of this shift. The U.S. officially views China's deliberate state-led push for technological dominance as a direct challenge to the current global leadership. I mean, geopolitical competition isn't just about drawing lines on a map anymore, right? It's all about technological statecraft. Moving into Section 2, China's high-tech ambitions, heavily driven by the Made in China 2025 strategy. So, over the last 10 years or so, China has been executing this incredibly meticulous strategy aimed squarely at technological sovereignty. Think back to 2015. The Made in China 2025 initiative was launched to completely transform the country from a low-tech factory hub into a high-tech powerhouse. By 2020, they shifted gears to dual circulation, really emphasizing cutting their reliance on foreign supply chains. And now, the upcoming 2026 plan is doubling down on absolute self-reliance to completely wipe out those external vulnerabilities. It's a step-by-step master plan. And you really see this master plan in how these two powers approach artificial intelligence. It is a stark contrast. The U.S. strategy is largely market-driven, heavily focused on foundational models, chatbots, and that massive race to artificial general intelligence, or AGI. China, on the other hand, is literally fusing AI directly into its industrial and military base. Their goal? Integrating physical AI into 90% of their manufacturing by 2030. They call it military-civil fusion, which essentially means private sector innovations are actively harnessed for national defense. It's a totally different playbook. We're seeing the exact same dynamic in the quantum computing race. Now, the U.S. currently holds a pretty solid lead when it comes to private quantum companies and secured patents. But look at China's claimed public investment. It is absolutely staggering, potentially up to $15.3 billion. While researchers definitely debate the exact precise figures, the sheer, unimaginable scale of that state funding shows you just how serious this push is to control the future of cybersecurity and data processing. Which brings us to Section 3, the semiconductor battlefield. Truly the choke point of the 21st century. $47.5 billion. Let that sink in. That is the size of Phase 3 of China's big fund, which just launched in 2024. So why spend that much? Well, the US and its allies have slapped some really strict export controls on advanced chips. You know, the tiny little brains that power everything from your smartphone to global military infrastructure. This $47.5 billion fund is China's direct state-funded answer to bypass those Western tech blockades. And the macroeconomic reality driving this is just wild. Over the last 50 years, China's investment as a share of its GDP has heavily outpaced the US. We're not just talking about cheap labor or comparative advantage anymore, right? This is the result of immense, sustained, state-directed investment poured straight into domestic industries to build up that self-reliance we talked about. And honestly, the research shows this investment is actually working. Despite facing what scholars like to call weaponized interdependence, which is when global supply chain reliance gets used as geopolitical leverage, China is adapting. Right now, they fabricate roughly 50% of the world's mature process, or legacy chips. We've seen Huawei successfully build a 7-nanometer chip completely domestically, totally defying sanctions. And on top of that, the Chinese AI model DeepSeek just pulled off cutting-edge breakthroughs using cheaper export-compliant hardware. They are absolutely innovating around the constraints. All right, zooming out a bit, Section 4, the BRICS expansion and how it's reshaping the global south. If you ever needed a wake-up call for traditional geopolitics, just look at the global GDP by purchasing power parity in 2024. The combined economic weight of the BRICS nations is now sitting at roughly 40%. That actually eclipses the G7, which is at about 28%. Now, sure, the G7 still holds massive nominal wealth, but in terms of real economic capacity and purchasing power, we are looking at a very direct challenge to traditional Western economic hegemony. A massive driver behind this shift was the 2024 BRICS expansion. By officially bringing in huge players like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran, BRICS fundamentally scrambled global energy geopolitics. Think about it. This wasn't just about adding more GDP to their roster. It was about strategically incorporating the exact nations that control strategic resources, global oil supplies, OPEC leadership, and supercritical shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz. That is some serious structural leverage. But it goes way beyond just energy dominance. BRICS is actively constructing alternative financial architectures. Initiatives like the New Development Bank, along with serious de-dollarization efforts to trade in local currencies, show a very clear intent here. The bloc is building out institutional frameworks to support South-South cooperation, and they are directly challenging the historical dominance of Western-led financial systems like the IMF and the World Bank. Finally, Section 5, Limits of the Alternative. Let's do a quick reality check on this multipolar order. Because as much as BRICS is growing rapidly, the data clearly shows it's not exactly a fully consolidated, counter-hegemonic system just yet. There are some severe internal divisions. First off, you've got incredible internal diversity. You have democracies and authoritarian states trying to perfectly align their security interests, which is tough. Then there's economic asymmetry. Members like India and Brazil have real fears about becoming part of a disproportionately China-centric bloc rather than an equal coalition. Throw in unresolved border disputes, like the historical rivalries between India and China, and a lack of unified institutional depth compared to the G7, and you really start to see the practical limits of this whole alternative. So what does this all mean for us? We are essentially living in an era defined by a dual engine of change. Massive, state-led technological advancements reshaping our supply chains on one side, and sweeping geopolitical competition empowering a new multipolar world order on the other. As we navigate this incredibly complex landscape, I want to leave you with one critical question to think about. Are we heading toward a future defined by a total fractured decoupling of rival spheres? Or will we somehow forge a new kind of balanced, multipolar interdependence? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the consensus, and I'll see you next time.